I never thought a simple text message could make my hands tremble like that. The message glowed on my phone screen, burning itself into my mind. You won't be joining us on the anniversary cruise. Jessica would prefer to keep it just immediate family. The words came from my son David, my only child. The same son whose lavish wedding I had paid for entirely just 1 year ago, the wedding that cost me my life savings, every penny of my retirement fund that I could access without penalty. The wedding I had poured my heart into, telling myself it was a gift of love, a foundation for his growing family. And now I wasn't immediate family enough for their anniversary celebration. I stared at those cold words as my chest tightened, the blood roaring in my ears. My hands stiff and ice cold slowly typed my response, okay. That was all I said. That one word contained everything, the hurt, the betrayal, the realization. But even as I pressed send, my mind was screaming. So I'm good enough to pay for your $85,000 wedding, but not good enough to celebrate your first anniversary. Not good enough to ride on your damn cruise ship. My heart pounded like war drums. My breathing grew shallow, but my face stayed still. Calm, almost detached. That part of me, the part that had always swallowed my pride, always excused their little cruelties, died in that moment. The phone buzzed again, a follow-up message from Jessica, my daughter-in-law. Polite but cold. I hope you understand, it's just simpler for everyone this way. Simpler. Of course it's simpler, Jessica. It's simpler now that you have the wedding paid for. Simpler now that you think you've secured your position. I set the phone down, my hands trembling slightly, but I wasn't crying. Not anymore. Because at that very moment, a new part of me woke up. The part that had been too soft for too long. The part that would no longer be humiliated. They thought I was going to accept this. They thought wrong. The silence in my house grew louder after that message. I sat in the same kitchen, but it didn't feel like my kitchen anymore. The morning sun crept across the granite countertops. I'd chosen the custom cabinets, I'd installed the Italian tile flooring. I'd selected all renovations I'd done specifically to host their engagement party 2 years ago. On the walls hung photographs from their wedding day. The ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco, draped in white roses and gold accents. The 7-tier cake that cost more than my first car. Jessica in her $12,000 Vera Wang gown. David in his custom Armani tuxedo. All paid for by me, every single detail. Because Jessica had cried about how her parents couldn't afford to give her the wedding she'd always dreamed of. I thought back to that day, how Jessica had hugged me after the father-daughter dance, tears glistening in her eyes. Oh, Margaret, you've given us everything. You're not just David's mother, you're like the mother I never had. We'll always be grateful. And I believed her. Of course I did, because mothers believe. I remembered the months I spent planning with them, driving to venues across Northern California, tasting endless cake samples, reviewing flower arrangements until my eyes crossed. I took on extra consulting work, cashed in bonds, even sold some of my late husband's vintage guitar collection, the one thing I'd sworn I'd never touch, all to give them their perfect day. The truth sat heavy on my chest now. I had made myself useful to them for so long as the wedding planner, the financier, the quiet helper, that they stopped seeing me as a person. I was a resource, a credit card. And once the bills were paid, they no longer needed the woman attached to it. The next morning, I couldn't stand the silence anymore. I called Helen. She arrived within the hour like she always did. No questions, no hesitation. That's the thing about friends who've known you for 40 years. They know when words aren't needed right away. She walked through my front door, her eyes immediately scanning my face. She saw it before I could even open my mouth. Tell me, she said softly, setting her purse down on the kitchen table. I slid my phone across the table so she could read the message herself. Her jaw clenched as she read it, but she said nothing at first. She just shook her head slowly, almost like she'd been expecting something like this. Finally, she spoke. They've been planning this, Maggie. Her words landed like a stone in my gut. My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. I thought maybe it was just Jessica that she got into his head, but David, he's not like this. Helen's lips pressed into a thin line. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine, steady and firm. Maggie, you raised a good boy, but you also raised a boy who never had to struggle, who always had you smoothing every path. And Jessica, she saw that. She saw what she could mold him into. You made yourself small for them, and now they're acting like that's where you belong. Her words stung because they were true. I had spent years being the safety net, paying off David's student loans without being asked, covering their rent when they were between jobs, flying out to help them move 3 times in 2 years, always at my own expense. You need to protect yourself now, Helen said, her voice low. Seriously, before they try to take more. I looked at her confused. Take more? They've already taken everything they're going to get. The wedding cleaned me out. Helen's eyes sharpened. Have you checked your credit cards recently? Do you know if they still have access to any of your accounts, Margaret? You gave Jessica your credit card for wedding expenses. Did you ever cancel it? A tight knot began forming in my stomach. My pulse quickened. I let her keep it for emergencies. I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. She said it would be easier for household things while they got established. Helen exhaled hard and sat back in her chair, her brow furrowing. Maggie, you need to log into everything today, and if anything looks off, we go straight to a lawyer. I swallowed the lump in my throat, my hands starting to tremble, but not from fear this time, from realization, from the cold understanding that my trust had been weaponized. I wasn't some sweet, helpless widow. I was just too trusting. And now they were counting on that trust to keep me quiet, to keep me compliant, to keep me invisible. But as Helen stared at me waiting for my answer, I felt something in me harden, a tiny ember that had lived too long under their shadows. I straightened my back, my voice steady for the first time in days. All right, we start today. Helen nodded. Good, because you're not done yet, and they're not ready for what's coming. That night, sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that message. That stupid, heartless text. I saw Jessica's rehearsed smile, David's absent nods. I heard Helen's voice ringing louder than the silence around me. You need to protect yourself now. At 2:17 a.m., I gave up trying to sleep. My heartbeat was loud in my ears as I reached for my laptop. For years, I'd let Jessica manage so many of the online accounts. It's just easier, Margaret. You shouldn't have to deal with all these confusing websites, she'd say, always with that sweet, caring voice. And I wanted to believe she was being helpful. I wanted to believe she cared. But now my fingers hovered over the login screen with a different kind of awareness. I typed in my credentials, fingers stiff with nerves. The credit card dashboard loaded. Everything looked normal at first glance. But that was the danger. It looked normal because I had never known to look closer. Slowly, methodically, I combed through the transaction history. What I found made my blood run cold. Purchases I didn't recognize. Expensive dinners at restaurants I'd never been to. Designer clothing from Nordstrom and Saks. Jewelry from Tiffany. A weekend at a spa resort in Napa Valley. Monthly charges for a country club membership I didn't even know existed. The further back I scrolled, the clearer the pattern became. It had started small: groceries here, gas there. Things that could be explained as household expenses. But after the wedding, the charges had exploded. In the past year alone, they had charged over $47,000 to my cards. My stomach dropped. I clicked deeper. Multiple cards had been opened in my name that I didn't even know about. Jessica was listed as an authorized user on every single one. The available credit was nearly maxed out on all of them. I stared at the screen, frozen. This wasn't just about excluding me from the cruise. It wasn't about hurt feelings or family tension. This was theft. And David, was he too blind to see it? Or did he know and simply not care, as long as the money kept flowing? A wave of heat pulsed through me. Not rage, not yet, but something colder, sharper. I closed the laptop gently and sat back. The dim light of my kitchen caught the corners of the wedding photographs still hanging on the walls. Photos that now looked like evidence of some elaborate con I had willingly stepped into. They never loved me. They loved what I could give them. My throat burned, but no tears came. Instead, I whispered into the quiet room. You gambled with my kindness, Jessica. You gambled with my trust. By morning, I was no longer uncertain. I wasn't panicking. Not anymore. The fog had cleared, leaving only cold focus. I called my financial advisor. Richard Brennan had managed my portfolio for 15 years, ever since my husband passed. He knew me as conservative, careful, someone who saved rather than spent. Of course, Mrs. Coleman, he answered pleasantly. What can I assist you with today? I'd like a complete audit of all accounts and credit lines in my name, I said, keeping my tone even. I have some concerns about unauthorized activity. There was a brief pause. I see, let me pull up your files. I waited, forcing my breath to stay steady, even as my hands trembled under the desk. Mrs. Coleman, his voice shifted, concerned now. I'm seeing several credit accounts I don't have on record. These weren't opened through our office. How many? Another pause. 7, all opened within the last 18 months. Total credit limit of approximately $200,000. I gripped the phone tighter. Current balance, Combined, just over $183,000. I closed my eyes briefly. $183,000. On top of the wedding costs, on top of everything else. Who's listed as authorized users? He hesitated. Jessica Coleman, she appears to have full access on all accounts. Of course she did. Mr. Brennan, I said calmly, though my world was tilting. I need you to freeze everything immediately, and I need contact information for the best financial attorney you know. I'll handle it right away, he said. Mrs. Coleman, I'm sorry this is happening to you. When I hung up, I sat in the silence again. There was no doubt anymore. Jessica wasn't helping. She was bleeding me dry, and they were on a cruise, an anniversary cruise. I was too much trouble to include, probably charging champagne and caviar to my cards at this very moment. I looked at my late husband Robert's photograph on the mantel. He had always warned me to be careful with money to protect myself, but I wanted so badly to believe in family. I know, Bobby, I whispered. I should have listened. I walked to the small park 3 blocks from my house. I needed air. I needed space that wasn't haunted by wedding photos and broken trust. The old maple tree still stood where Robert and I used to sit every Sunday morning sharing coffee and the newspaper. It had been his favorite spot in Walnut Creek, what he called our little piece of peace. I sat down on the weathered bench beneath its branches, the cool morning breeze carrying away some of the weight that had been crushing my chest. For a long while, I said nothing, just breathing, just existing. And then I whispered to him softly, as though he were still sitting beside me. You would have seen it, Bobby. You would have known. My fingers found the small diamond pendant I still wore, the one he'd given me on our 25th anniversary. The day we'd renewed our vows, promising to take care of each other always. Back when David was still our bright-eyed boy, eager to help his dad in the garage, not scheming to drain his mother's accounts. I bit my lip hard to stop the trembling. I didn't want to cry. Not anymore. The tears had been spent long ago. The next morning, I was waiting at the law offices of Hartman and Associates before they even unlocked the door. Thomas Hartman had been recommended by Richard Brennan as the best financial attorney in the Bay Area. I needed the best. He greeted me with a professional smile, but concern flickered in his eyes when he saw my face. Mrs. Coleman, please come in. I sat down across from him and folded my hands carefully in my lap. My voice was steady, but there was no softness in it. I need protection from my son and daughter-in-law. They've stolen from me. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Tell me everything. For the next hour, I laid it all out. The wedding costs, the credit cards, the systematic draining of my accounts, the text message that had finally opened my eyes. Hartman took notes, his expression growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, he set down his pen. Mrs. Coleman, this is criminal fraud. We're talking about identity theft, elder financial abuse. I'm only I interrupted. In California, financial elder abuse laws kick in at 65, but the fraud charges alone are serious enough. We need to act immediately. What can we do? First, we freeze everything. I'll file emergency orders today. Second, we document every transaction. Third, he paused. We need to consider whether you want to pursue criminal charges. The word hung in the air. Criminal charges against my own son. Can we start with the civil side? I asked quietly. Get my money protected first. Of course. But Mrs. Coleman, if they've done what you're describing, they won't stop unless forced. You might also want to consider hiring a private investigator. I arched an eyebrow. Is that necessary? Hartman's voice was gentle but firm. If Jessica is this sophisticated in her theft, she's likely hidden assets, maybe even set up accounts you don't know about yet. We need a complete picture. The idea made my stomach twist, but not with fear, with readiness, with clarity. Do it, I said. Whatever it takes. He nodded. I'll have my best investigator on it today. Gregory Chen, former FBI. He specializes in financial crimes. As I stepped back into my car, I felt different. Not lighter, the weight was still there. But I was no longer carrying it alone. I had an army now, and we were going to war. The very next morning, something slid under my door. I saw it immediately when I stepped into the kitchen, a manila envelope. No postage, hand-delivered. On top was a sticky note in Jessica's handwriting. Just need your signature on a few things for tax purposes. We'll discuss when we get back, Jay. With careful fingers, I opened the envelope and unfolded the stack of documents inside. At first glance, they looked routine tax forms, insurance updates. But I'd learned to look closer now. Buried in the middle, disguised between legitimate-looking papers, was a quitclaim deed. For my house, transferring ownership to David and Jessica. My hands shook as I read it again. They weren't content with credit card theft. They wanted my home. The house Robert and I had bought in 1998 had raised David and had paid off through decades of careful saving. I stood there gripping the papers, my hands trembling. Not from fear, but from the cold realization of how far they were willing to go. They delivered this while heading to their cruise, thinking I'd sign it without reading, without questioning, just like I always had. I set the papers down gently, like they were made of glass. Let them believe I hadn't noticed. Let them think I was still that same naive woman who trusted without question. The private investigator would be arriving later today. My attorney had already started preparing the fraud documentation. And now with this quitclaim deed, I had written proof of their intent to steal my home. I sat at the kitchen table as the morning sun warmed my face. They thought this was still their game, but they forgot something crucial. Quiet doesn't mean weak. By noon, I was back in Hartman's office. This time, Gregory Chen was there too, a compact man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. They tried to steal my house, I said, sliding the quitclaim deed across the desk. Chen examined it carefully. Hand-delivered, while they're conveniently out of state on a cruise. He exchanged a look with Hartman. This escalates things. This is conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse fraud, attempted theft of real property. What else have you found? I asked Chen. He opened a folder. Your daughter-in-law has been busy. She's opened investment accounts using your social security number. She's been slowly liquidating bonds from your portfolio, small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts. She's even taken out a personal loan using your house as collateral. My stomach dropped. A loan against my house, $75,000, approved last month. The money went into an account under her maiden name, Jessica Mitchell. I sat back, breathing slowly. They weren't just stealing. They were positioning to take everything piece by piece until I had nothing left. There's more, Chen continued. I found social media posts from their cruise. They're not on an anniversary celebration. They're on a real estate investment cruise. They're using your money to learn how to flip houses. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. They were using my money to learn how to take my house. What do we do? I asked. Hartman leaned forward. We strike now, while they're gone. We freeze everything, file the civil suits, and prepare criminal charges. By the time they dock, their world will have changed. I nodded. Do it, all of it. The next 3 days moved like a perfectly choreographed dance. Every morning, I met with Hartman and Chen. We documented everything, every transaction, every fraud, every forged signature. The credit cards were frozen. The investment accounts were locked. The fraudulent loan was challenged. But the masterpiece was the restraining order. Financial abuse restraining order, preventing them from coming within 100 yards of me or my property. It would be served the moment they stepped off the ship. I also did something else. I changed every lock in my house, installed security cameras, moved my valuables to a safety deposit box. And I called a real estate agent. I want to list my house, I told her. Oh, wonderful. When would you like to? Now, today, cash offers only. Quick close. She blinked. Mrs. Coleman, is everything all right? Everything's perfect, I said. I'm ready for a fresh start. The house sold in 48 hours. Cash offer above asking price. The closing was set for the day after David and Jessica returned. My belongings were already being packed, headed for a beautiful condo in Sausalito with ocean views and excellent security. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The morning they returned, I parked across the street from my old house. I watched as their Uber pulled up, saw them climb out, tanned and laughing. Jessica was wearing new jewelry, undoubtedly charged to my cards. David was scrolling through his phone, probably checking the investment opportunities from their cruise. They walked to the front door. David's key didn't work. He tried again. Jessica pushed past him, tried her key. Nothing. That's when they saw the sold sign, and that's when the process server appeared. David Coleman, Jessica Coleman. They turned confused. You're being served. I watched as the documents were placed in their hands. Restraining orders, civil suits, fraud charges, everything. Jessica's face went white. David's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's when I walked across the street. Mom, David's voice cracked somewhere between confusion and fear. Jessica's eyes narrowed. What the hell is this? I let the silence hang, watching their panic bloom like a poisonous flower. You won't be needing keys, I said calmly. The house is sold. You can't do this. Jessica lunged forward, her voice rising to a shriek. We have rights. That money was a gift. The wedding money was a gift. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder thick with evidence. You're right, the wedding money was a gift. The $183,000 you stole after that's called fraud. I handed the folder to David. His hands shook as he opened it, flipping through the pages. Credit card statements, account records, the fraudulent loan documents. The quitclaim deed they'd tried to trick me into signing. David's face drained of color as he read. Jessica, what is this? Don't play dumb now, she snapped at him. You knew, you benefited. Don't pretend you didn't see the new cars, the trips, the… Shut up, he whispered, still staring at the papers. I watched them fracture in real time. The united front they'd presented, the carefully coordinated con, it was crumbling. Mom? David's voice was small now. I knew she was using the cards for household stuff, but $200,000 of household stuff, I asked quietly. The loan against my house, the investment accounts in my name. He looked at Jessica, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. You said it was for our future. I said what you wanted to hear, Jessica snarled. While you sat back and let me handle everything. Don't act innocent now. I took a deep breath. The restraining order means you can't come near me. The fraud charges mean you'll likely face jail time. The civil suit means I'll recover what you stole, even if I have to garnish your wages for the next 20 years. Mom, please, David started. I raised my hand. I'm done being mom to you. You made that clear when you said I wasn't immediate family. Jessica threw the papers on the ground. You think you've won? You'll die alone, you bitter old? I'd rather be alone, I said softly, than be surrounded by thieves who call themselves family. I turned and walked back to my car. Behind me, I could hear them arguing, their voices rising, blame flying like shrapnel. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Mom, please, we can fix this. It's not what you think. Jessica got carried away. Please talk to me. I didn't reply. Another came minutes later. I'm sorry, I never wanted this. I love you. I stared at those words. Love. He'd remembered the word now that the money was gone. I drove to my new condo in Sausalito, where boxes waited to be unpacked, and ocean views promised peace. That night I didn't turn on the lights. I sat by the window watching the sunset paint the water gold and crimson. They thought I would crumble under the weight of their betrayal. They thought I was too soft, too eager for their love to stand up for myself. But they'd forgotten something vital. A mother's love is fierce. And when that love is betrayed, when it's twisted into a weapon against her, that same fierce heart can turn to steel. I whispered to the empty room, to Bobby's memory, to the woman I was becoming. They gambled everything on my weakness. They lost everything to my strength. The waves crashed against the shore below, endless and powerful. Tomorrow I would unpack. I would build a new life. I would heal. But tonight I would simply breathe. Free, unashamed, unbroken. They had taken my money. They had taken my trust. But they had given me something precious in return, my freedom. And that was worth more than any wedding, any cruise, any family that was only family when the bills needed paying. In the distance, my phone buzzed again. I turned it off without looking. Some messages don't deserve a response. And some family is better lost than found.